before I begin this, I'd like to point out that the top 10 lists will now be a part of Let's Tackle, because they have a lot to do with movies and video games and all the other stuff I review on Let's Tackle. With that being said, let's begin. Well, I'm sure this is a list that none of you expected to come. It's the top 10 Pixar films. I decided to do this because Pixar has been such a fantastic company. They've made so many fantastic films, but only 10 of them can be my favorites. Now, the films that don't get featured on this list, I might explain why I didn't put them on the list because I haven't reviewed them yet. Though that might be saved for another video. With that being said, let's begin. Number 10. Monsters, Inc. It's very hard to place a film like this at number 10 because I know there's a lot of people that say this is one of the greatest films of all time. Me personally, I do agree with that. The concept has been nothing original. I have kind of seen it before, but I think it's just the characters and all the other creativity that they give to it. I think it makes it a pretty good film. Like, the main characters are pretty likable, but I think what really bothered me the most about this movie was that I thought the villains were very weak, and that Billy Crystal's character was actually not that funny. Though there were a lot of things that really did stand out about this movie, I think it's actually enough to make it the number 10 spot. Granted, it does have a great concept as well as a really great climax. It's just number 10 because, let's be honest, it does have problems, but it's still good enough for me. Number 9. Ratatouille. I put this film at number 9 because, while it is very good, it's the second Pixar film made by Brad Bird. It does actually have a few problems. Some of the characters in the movie are not that good. The Linguini character was kind of boring. The chef villain was very boring. The rat family was boring. And at times I do think it can get a little bit distracting, but I think what really makes this film stand out is that it's very pretty looking. I like the designs. I especially love the ending. But the designs in this movie are very good, especially the design on the critic. That was like the best design in the whole film. The music sounded really nice. It was a really good film, and it did teach you a really good thing about cooking. Especially the moral at the end. I think you can definitely say this was definitely worth enough to be the number 9 spot. Number 8. WALL-E. I placed this film so low, and that's probably gonna make a lot of people really angry at me for this because they're like, oh no, WALL-E's a fantastic film, it should be higher, it should be like number 5 or something like that. I put it at number 8 because, while the first half was reasonably, really well done, I think the second half kind of felt a little bit flat. Like, there was a few problems that the second half had. Some of the other robots, apart from the two main ones, they weren't that memorable. It's a little distracting that they have CG people and then live action at others, and how the CG people don't like actual people. It's kind of distracting. And the villain of the movie, the Autobot, I guess it wasn't that interesting. But I think what really made this film was that it was very colourful, and I think what really made this film stand out was just that in the first half there's no dialogue, and it just gives time to make these two robots connect with each other, and that they have such a good connection. They have such a good friendship / romance. It's very genuine, but I kind of wish the second half was a little bit different. With that being said, though, this is still a great film. Number 7. This film's number 7 because it is reasonably very enjoyable. In fact, there's actually a lot of stuff I really like about this movie. It's very creative. I like the different characters that this movie have. The first 10 minutes with the couple getting to know each other and growing up throughout the years is like the best thing I've ever seen in any animated movie. It's very dramatic and it's very well done. I really like the characters. That being said, though, this film does have a couple problems, like how the villain of the movie is reasonably good, but I find it a little bit odd that they're both really old and yet he's around the same time. Kind of a bit of a problem that I have with it, and at times I think the film does get a little bit lazy with the jokes, especially when they're being used over and over again. But that's honestly nitpicks. This film is marvelous. I love it. I wish I could place it higher, but I think the films above do a much better job. Number 6. Toy Story 3. This is probably going to make a lot of people really angry at me for this. Like, why isn't Toy Story 3 higher? It's like the greatest animated film of all time. Granted, I love Toy Story 3, but to me, not only do I think it's not as good as Toy Story 1 and 2, but I also think that it actually does have a few problems with it. Like, I think the film is not very colorful sometimes. There's a lot of grays and there's a lot of greens, and at times it is very colorful, but for the most part, I think it was mostly about them trying to get out. The daycare center was way too ugly, and that's really all I had with it. Nonetheless, though, it's a great film. I really love the characters, I love the toy jokes, the villain was reasonably threatening, and it was very, very nice conclusion to Toy Story 3. I just hope Toy Story 4 stands out really well. Number 5. The Incredibles. Not only do I just love this movie for all the action scenes, but I think it's very, very clever. You know, Brad Bird has such great connection with family, and I think the family relationship with the family is very genuine, and it's very, very smart. Like I said, I think what I really like about this movie is that there's a lot of action. You know, I love the action scenes for a Pixar film. It's really well done. You know, it's the idea that it's a superhero family film. It was very, very smart. And there's just a lot of stuff I really love about this movie. I love the main characters. I love the villain. I love all the action scenes. I love the story, the genuine moments. It's a very, very well done film. I really wish they'd make a sequel to this because I think it really does deserve more. That's really all I can say about this film, but nonetheless, it's number 5 for a reason. Number 4. Finding Nemo. This film is very, very dramatic, and you know what? I think they excelled upon it fantastically. You know, the underwater world doesn't have to be so modern like in Shark Tale. It can be what it wants to be. It's so colorful, and I just love the different designs that this movie has, and the story is very, very genuine. I love it. I don't think I've ever seen a type of story like this before. The main characters are very, very enjoyable. The side characters get a lot of good laughs, especially Dory. You know, she's really, really funny. And the music was so, so gorgeous, and the colors were so light and so beautiful that, honestly, I wish this was higher, but I think why it's number 4 is because at times I did expect what was going to happen. We knew what it was going to happen, but honestly, that's really all I can say. Finding Nemo is fantastic. Number 3. Inside Out. I recently saw this film yesterday, and it completely blew me away. This film is so genuine, so funny, so colorful, so creative, and so clever. This film does really, really well. It's so clever, but I feel like I've seen the type of premise before. Like, I think there was a TV show that kind of did the same thing, but I think this one just did it much better because, you know, they could do whatever the heck they wanted to do. They could create their own inside world, and the characters, especially the emotions inside the girl's head, was so enjoyable. They were very, very funny. I liked the different ideas that the film had. It was so, so dramatic. I actually got very teary-eyed at some moments. This film is easily the best Pixar film since Toy Story 3. It's so great to see that Pixar is finally going with this formula, and I really hope they continue to do really, really well. Number 2. Toy Story. It's kind of easy to put Toy Story at number 2 because while I do like the film, for the most part, it did have a couple problems I had with it. I think what really made Toy Story just the number 2 spot was because at times I think the CG people did look a little distracting because, you know, they looked a little bit too plastic, and sometimes the jokes can not exactly hit bullseye. It's very modern writing, and I really love the characters. In fact, the characters in this movie are fantastic. I love all of them. I love Woody, I love Buzz, I love the other toys. They're just so complex and so great that you really enjoy spending time with them. They're very likable, and on top of that, I really think the film had a really, really well done story. And the number 1 favorite Pixar film of all time is Toy Story 2. I love this movie. I go crazy for this movie. It's my favorite Pixar film, not only that, but it's my favorite animated film alongside The Lion King. It has so much I love. Not only the characters really enjoyable, but they have so many more new characters as well. I love the Roundup gang, I love all the references, I love how they included Barbie in the movie as well, and I really love Zurg, I love the other characters, I love how they added another Buzz Lightyear, I love the story, I love the dilemma that Woody goes through, and I love the dramatic moments, I love the music. Man, I love so much about this movie. I can't wait to do a review of it when I have the time. Toy Story 2 is my favorite Pixar film of all time, and you can definitely see why. So we've got a little bit of time on our hands. I should probably discuss why I didn't put the other Pixar films anywhere on this list. First up is Cars. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like Cars. It used to be one of my favorites, but the reason it wasn't on the list is because after Inside Out came out, I kind of had to throw it out because while it does have good characters, I think the story felt kind of predictable. It didn't look that great. It was decent, though it just wasn't deserved to be on the list. And that's also the reason for Cars 2. I don't think it's bad, it just isn't that engaging, you know. It's not bad, it's just not that very good. It's okay, from what I can tell. You know, I like the action scenes in the movie, but I think what really made this movie so bad was that it just didn't have very good story, and it didn't have very good designs either. I have no idea why this was a spy film. The first one had nothing to do with spies, so I kind of see that as a little bit pointless. And next up is Brave. I didn't put Brave on the list just because the story felt so predictable. I mean, it did look nice, but in my opinion, it wasn't that engaging, you know. There were so many cliches they've used. They felt like they tried to rush the story through, and just wasn't really enough for me to put it on the list. I don't even really love it. I'm still shocked it won instead of Wreck-It Ralph at the Annie Awards, but it just wasn't that very good. Next up is Monsters University. For a prequel, Monsters University was not that well done. You know, I think it really lacked originality. I've seen a lot of 80s college movies, but this one, it wasn't that very interesting. There was a lot of characters that were very forgettable. There were some that were really good, like Dean Harvscrabble, she was really good. And there was a few characters that got a few laughs, but I think for the most part, the film, while mediocre, was not that engaging. I didn't find the characters very likable, and I think it really should have had more originality. And then there's A Bug's Life. I didn't put this film on the list because, while it did have a couple good characters, mainly the Circus Bugs characters, they were fantastic, and it did look colourful, I don't think the film had very good to do with its characters and the story. The characters, for the most part, were very black and white. I've seen that type of character before, they weren't that interesting, and the story felt so recycled. We're gonna go through that story where the character is lying, and then he gets thrown out, and then he comes back and saves the day. We've seen this type of story before, and I really despise it. So I didn't put this film on the list for those very reasons. And those were my top 10 favorite Pixar films. I also explained why I didn't put the other ones on the list. This has been very long. I have to stop because I can't go higher than 15 minutes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on my next top 10 list when I do the top 10 best SML videos.